So we have quite a huge panel here, as you can see, with scientists, activists. We don't have practitioners, unfortunately, but we are all farmers. I know, like, David is a practitioner. He has been telling me. Yes, he's a farmer, practicing farmer. We have got legal minds. We have got investigative journalists, not just journalists. We have got public health specialists. We have got toxicologists. So I think it's quite an endowed team with representation from Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Please welcome this panel with a clap of hands, please. We are going to go directly. We are quite many in this panel, but we'll manage. Each of you will get a question. Later, we'll open the floor for discussion. If you demonstrate that you are going to sleep, we'll stop and ask you questions, not you asking us. So please, focus. Please, focus. Good. To start with, we have Dr. Vera Ngowi from all the way from Tanzania, mainland, if I'm not wrong, not Zanzibar. Daktari is a retired lecturer in the School of Public Health and Social Sciences at Muhimbili University of Health and Applied Sciences, Tanzania. Dr. Ngowi is leading Tanzanian expert in public health, toxicology, and pesticide safety, with over 3 decades of experience in research, and policy engagement. She previously served at Tropical Pesticide Research Institute, the famous TPIRI, I've pronounced it well, for nearly 30 years. And she led pesticide toxicology studies and advised national and international agencies on pesticide management. Please welcome Daktari. Karibu sana Daktari. Dr. Ngowi, we have one question for you that's mouthful in terms of the content that I know will emerge from your experience background. And I would like to ask you that you briefly tell us the status of supportive government policies in Tanzania towards withdrawal or reduced dependency on farmers on HHPs. Can I repeat? Briefly explain to us the status of supportive government policies towards withdrawal of HHPs, or otherwise, policies that have contributed to reduced dependency on HHPs by farmers. The mic is there.
Thank you very much. I first got surprised talking about supportive policies.
Recording in progress.
Legislation that has helped us reduce the use of HHPs in Tanzania. In Tanzania, we have HHPs. We have not advanced to reducing the HHPs. And we knew about the HHPs because it is the government that did the research through FAO support, and they came up with that list of 44 highly hazardous pesticides, and they went ahead and reported in Parliament that they have these pesticides on their register and they are working towards phasing them, banning actually. They said they had banned them, and it came out in the newspapers that Tanzania has banned about 44 HHPs, and we were very happy about it. The laws are clear. We have laws. We have had laws since after the collapse of the East Africa community. We remained with the Tropical Pesticide Research Institute that came up with the law on pesticides, research and control. and it was very elaborate on controlling pesticides, and it worked very well. But then they changed it to say this now we are dealing with plant protection substances. The Ministry of Agriculture said that they want to take up the roles of regulating pesticides because they are working with international organizations on phytosanitary, I don't know what, and this phytosanitary international law requires them to take up regulation. But then they realized that they don't have the capacity within the ministry. They asked TPRI to do it. TPRI was doing it very well. Then they said, we don't want you to control pesticides. They came up with the plant plant health and pesticide agency act first, and then the agency. Now that one is the one that decided to take up the role of controlling pesticides. And now in controlling pesticides, they are emphasizing on plant health. And plant health, they are emphasizing on the use of pesticides. So they don't want to face the pesticides because they are charged with the responsibility of ensuring plant health. But then they don't allow anybody else to regulate pesticides because they are the authority as far as pesticides are concerned. So is that supportive? In a way, maybe somehow. So we are stranded actually. And we have other laws. We have so many policies, even in the Ministry of Health. They also have policies that are talking about pesticides, and they are dealing with the public health pesticides. They work with WHO.
Recording stopped.
Fortunately, WHO and
Recording
FAO,
in progress.
they are working together when it comes to pesticide management. They've come together and they've come up with guidelines on how to control pesticides. But still our government is saying, yes, we know, and we are signatories, but we are thinking about it. So this is the situation in Tanzania. We don't have.
Did you hear that? It's about management, regulation, and not support. And that actually takes me, and this might come in this discussion, colleagues, especially from Kenya, this issue of pronouncement by government in terms of withdrawal. Does it translate? Because you talked about government doing A, B, C, D by words, the 40 HHPs that you mentioned about. Does announcement from the executive translate to the actual withdrawal? Does what we are told is supportive translate to manage? I deliberately use that word, and I didn't want to, in fact, act as if, because I wanted to hear from you, because when I met you in Tanzania, you raised the same issue of regulation, management in terms of plant health, and that does that support plant health? So I think you have brought an issue, you have provoked our minds, that I'm asking the audience, maybe keep your questions if you resonate with what Daktari has said, because that's a burning issue. And I think it also has an implication of what is happening in Kenya.
Yeah, and maybe to add, in Tanzania, there is a One Health approach towards even pesticide use and regulation. So from the conference that we held in November 2024, we came up with deliberations that we did a policy brief. Not working. So we have One Health, which is under the Prime Minister's office, and they are the ones who are supposed to coordinate the different ministries as far as things which are cross-cutting. So we took our policy brief, which came up with the resolutions that were suggested during the symposium in November, and it included the need to ban the 44 HHPs. So we went to the Prime Minister's office and gave them our recommendations, and they were very happy about it. And they said, for sure, we are going to take action. And we have this task force. We have a team that includes the regulator from TPHPA, Tanzania Plant Health and Pesticide Authority. And for sure, we are going to deal with it. So it's almost a year now. We are still waiting. Hopefully, they will do something about it. We even went to the president's office, actually. Some of us are notorious for pushing things. And we were welcomed, and we sat together with the authority, and they were actually defending the no action by saying they are negotiating with stakeholders on alternatives so that they can phase out the HSPs. Then we asked, who are these stakeholders? Because we are also stakeholders, but we've never been approached to contribute to. They say crop life. We are waiting for crop life to suggest alternatives to us so that we can phase out. And we are working with Kenya, Uganda. We are working within actually East Africa. So we have our policies and guidelines within East Africa. We are working together and we will come up with phasing out together. So when we heard Kenya talking about banning pesticide, we said, where is the harmonization?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I think you have brought this element of task force. We are consulting. We are negotiating. Yes, all those things. There's a bit of time, buying time. Thank you very much, Dr. Vera Goy, a public health and social science specialist with a strong background in public health toxicology and pesticide safety. Thank you very much. Give a clap. Thank you so much. Next is my colleague Elizabeth Atieno from Greenpeace Africa. Elizabeth is a passionate food sovereignty advocate in Greenpeace, who is committed to advancing farmer-led solutions and promoting ecological justice in Africa's food system. She champions sustainable farming practices that protect biodiversity, empower smallholder farmers, and reduce dependency on harmful chemicals. She actively challenges unjust food and agricultural policy while amplifying the voices of communities most affected by climate change, land degradation, and unsafe food systems. So if you follow what Honorable Neto talked about, the aspect of food security and the right to food, this is the person to put that into practice. So, Mheshimiwa, you have a student here who is practicing your gospel. Elizabeth, I have
Aaron.
this question for you.
Yes.
As African farmers, are African farmers to blame for the misuse of pesticides, or do systematic factors such as training, inadequate regulations, limited access to sustainable practice also play a significant role in associated risks to human health and the environment?
We can all agree that when you have a failed system, you don't blame the people who have been forced to live within that system. What you are supposed to do is to fix it. And we see this all the time. For example, when you're a patient and you go to the hospital and you're given wrong medication, who are they going to blame? They're going to blame the doctor, the pharmaceutical companies, the agency that is supposed to overlook that. They're not going to blame the patient for getting the wrong medication. And I think that's the same case with farmers. You cannot blame a farmer for a failed system. It's that failed system. So African farmers, we can say that African farmers are ignorant and continue to use these toxic pesticides that they're not supposed to do. Most of them don't even have this information. They're just trying to do the best they can with what they have. So you cannot say that it's ignorance. What we are supposed to call it, it's premedicated outcome. It's like someone is already setting you up for failure. So if you set a farmer for failure, then they'll definitely fail. We need to system that is putting them in ways where they can be able to reproduce food agroecologically. We have had stories that have been shared with a very successful farm. We know that agroecology works, so why can't we work towards that and make sure that that is there? And the reality of the system is that, for example, when you look at training, most of the time you find that that training is limited, and when it's there, it's the corporations themselves who are selling these toxic pesticides that are doing the training on the ground. You look at issues of weak regulation and enforcement. Right now, we have had a case of where evidence has been submitted, but enforcement is becoming a problem. The government says, I'll do it, and then they don't do it. We are also looking at issues of sustainable farmer-led solutions. Are we really listening to farmers? Someone, one of the presenters in the morning mentioned that farmers have a lot of knowledge and information. Are we really listening? Are we going there and trying to understand that they are actually the ones who can be able to give us solutions? Looking at issues of investment, are we really putting real investments when it comes to agroecology? Or are we just saying that we are going to transition but not putting investments behind it, even at the county level? We now are getting a lot of county agroecology policies. Are we really going to put real investments behind them so that we can get farmers to transition to agroecology? So I think we cannot blame farmers for the risk that we are seeing. Corporations have the information about the data on toxicity of these pesticides. They have the power over formulation of these pesticides, distribution of these pesticides. They have the resources that they can use to train the farmers on use and handling of pesticides, but they're not doing that. So we cannot put that responsibility on farmers. We have to follow the power, which is influencing the current food system that we have as Africans. And what are we supposed to do? We are supposed to make sure that we have regulations that work. If we decide we are going to do something, then let's do that. Let's have real investments. Let's make sure that we hold these corporations accountable, because they are having our environment, they are having our people, are we holding them accountable? Earlier today, I had a conversation with the lawyer, and I'm glad he's back on the panel. He was talking about the liability mechanism. Are we really holding them accountable for the harm that we are seeing? So we cannot sit here and say that we are going to blame farmers for a system that has really failed. I think since morning we talked about this, and we can all agree, farmers are not the cause of these risks that we are seeing. They are actually the ones who are paying the price when it comes to use of HPs. Thank you so much.
Law, ecology, and social justice. Kelvin is a lead petitioner through the Africa Center for Corrective and Preventive Action, ACCPA, in petition E048 of 2022, a landmark public interest case challenging regulation and continued use of highly hazardous pesticides in Kenya. His litigation has been instrumental in reshaping the pesticide governance and accountability, sparking multi-stakeholder dialogue, and mobilizing regional civil society. Actually, this case has attracted interest in the whole of East Africa and South African region. So welcome, Wakili. Allow me to ask you this question, Kevin. What is the role of science in strategic litigation, basing on your successful petition of 2022 against Agrochemical Association of Kenya? This one, based from the initiation of this petition, the results that you are finding.
Thank you so much, Doc. I think science has been a quintessential component of our litigation. When we filed this petition in 2022, we relied significantly on the findings and reports of the Route to Food and some other reports that have been shared today. There's been a notion out there that some of us who are against or seeking the withdrawal of some of these highly hazardous pesticides are actually fighting the science. To the contrary, we actually believe in the science. And we believe that science is so much limitless that it can actually provide us safe alternatives that do not imperil our lives and health, especially of the primary users, our farmers and consumers in extension. Our petition, when we initiated it, we did sue the Agrochemical Association of Kenya, including Bayer, including Syngenta, BASF, who are the highest marketers and distributors of these highly hazardous pesticides in Kenya. And In a landmark ruling recently on 18th September, Justice Kemei did agree with us that these pesticides have had gross effects to the health of the Kenyan users, and there is need also to document them and bring them on board. So we embarked on another journey, this time with experts, forensic experts. We've been within horticultural hotbeds of Timau, Naivasha. We took a cohort of 70 users who are farmers and small-scale farmers and workers in flower farms. And we took their blood samples and their urine. We tested it, and today in the morning I received very shocking yet unsurprising results to many of us seated here. A significant number of these patients have paraquat in their bodies. They have glyphosate in their body. And the essential or the meaning of it is, the human body is supposed to have 0 unit of paraquat. So if you have a farmer who's now 2 or 3 units of paraquat in the body, that is essentially too high because you are supposed to have 0. So the body spends a lot of energy trying to break down paraquat, which has a very high half-life. And it breaks down the paraquat to monoquat, which can now, be passed out as urine. So this essentially creates a lot of oxidative stress in the human body. In a nutshell, many of our users or many of our farmers out there are walking dead. Because once you have paraquat in your body, it essentially reduces your quality of life, your quality of health. In other words, if you are to live for 70 years, you're now reduced to living 35 years because essentially of the paraquat in your blood. When the Agrochemical Association of Kenya has responded to our petition, and to add up on what she said, they've always said that, our pesticides, if used correctly, will not result to this. So they just want to blame the users and consumers. And my argument has been simple. These pesticides are made by scientists, and they actually know that they are selling to Africa, whose users are nearly illiterate and semi-illiterate users. So if you're really blaming the semi-illiterate and illiterate farmers whom you're selling to, in other words, you mean that in the first place, you shouldn't be selling to them because they do not qualify to be part of your, market, So if you're selling these pesticides to a class of persons whose literacy, their skills is not enough, for them to understand the true implications of these pesticides, it means you have an extended producer responsibility, such that you should be able to break this science in a manner that these farmers are able to understand. So that if they buy paraquat, they're buying with understanding that if I ingest paraquat, and by ingestion, when I interviewed some of these farmers, simple words like ingestion, to them was something, they can't understand, they can't comprehend. You may try to explain to them that paraquat actually can enter your body through the skin. And they seem surprised. For them, they think that as long as they've not ingested this pesticide, throw them out, then they are safe. And their remedies are always that after I spray, I'll always go and take a glass of water or milk, and that is okay. They think that by taking a glass of milk or a glass of cold water, they've reduced or watered down the paraquat that could have been in their body, which essentially is not sound science. So I think science can give us safe alternatives. We cannot keep on relying on these pesticides on the notion that we really need them. We need them, but we need safe ones which can not imperil the lives of our farmers. I think 70 of these cases now that I'm speaking of would not be here, or I wouldn't be filing them in court if these farmers used safe alternatives. They will not be having levels of these insane levels of paraquat in their blood systems. So what we looking forward to the court, and this is what will really even shape this field further, is sometimes to force these manufacturers to do the right thing. We have to force them to make economic decisions, such that if the court finds them guilty and awards damages to our farmers and users, then they'll have to sit down and make economic decisions and know that if we don't stop this, then we'll continue paying damages to users of these compounds. And so they'll start themselves producing safe alternatives for our people. And this calls for multifaceted approach. We need scientists, we need doctors, we need lawyers, we need those in the policy. But to begin with is the science. Then from the science, the law. And then from the law, the advocacy. Thank you so much, Dr.
That is Dr. David Kabanda from Uganda. Dr. Kabanda is a lawyer and food system advocate working in the intersection of human rights, agriculture, and public health. He is the executive director of KEFROT. He leads national advocacy on the right to food, agrochemical regulations, and environmental justice. I think for the last issue on environmental justice, I had you at last time when I read about you in court was in the East African court. Yes, where you took, some I don't want to mention, in court. Yes, yes, the Baba of Uganda. His work promotes legal empowerment, food safety, and accountability in Uganda food system. Thank you, Dr. Kamada, and welcome. I have one question for you, Daktari. This is on how can legal and human rights frameworks be used more effectively to hold governments and corporations accountable for the harms caused by unsafe pesticide use and to protect citizens' rights to safe and adequate food. That builds on what I asked Kelvin, specific to Kenya, but would like you now to frame within the legal framework how you guys can approach that element of law.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. Something is going to happen after this symposium. Every time I have met Dr. Harun, something big happens in my life and in this advocacy. I want to tell you that from here, Kenya is ahead of us in many things. I have been speaking to Mr. Wambale here that I think we have slept on the job for so long. We have been great consumers of your literature, Root to Food, and I'm very honored to be a member of the Alliance. I had to create a county and then I became a member. So we are going to sue not only government of Uganda, but also Tanzania. Don't worry, you have many problems. Those ones will not look at them. But we cannot afford to lose the good gesture of Kenya. At least the 77 band, they must not find themselves anywhere in East Africa. That must stop. Yes, this is serious. Thank you so much for clapping. You are giving me more energy. When we started doing this work, by the way, what maybe I forgot to write in the bio is I'm also now a farmer. I did law, becoming very proud. You know how lawyers coming from humble backgrounds can be. I'm now a lawyer. What? But now I have learned that I must be a farmer myself. So I am a farmer. In my office, 80% of the food we eat, we grow it in office, agroecologically. We started even 2 learning centers, and now we have started families and bringing families on board to eat from our farms, from the learning centers, agroecologically. So just imagine if all the people here can start like my sister presented, we can change Africa. Now, I went back. I did a master's in health law. Then I went back and did a PhD in food law, by the way. Yes. And when I met, the first time I met with Dr. Joachim on 17th of April, the following day I was going to graduate. So when I saw him today, I was like, I'm going to be graduating into something bigger than who I am. Now, you asked me about human rights and the law. How do we use that to get to where we want to be? I have been telling movements that are working on agroecology and pesticide control that without sounding like law is everything, we cannot win this battle without good governance and accountability in the food and agriculture sector. Those two, we must be able. This is my brother now. I was listening to you, and I'm like, this my brother needs to be taken to court. But not from an adversarial point of view. You sue him, then court makes serious orders, and then when you go out, you tell him, you see, this is what we have to do. So there is no, we shouldn't allow, dear ladies and gentlemen, fellow advocates, which going forward, the science is on our side, isn't it? Professor talked about war. War. We now must understand the art of war. And one of the art subjects in war is you take the war to them. For the World War II to end, you know what Americans did. You don't allow the war to come to you. You take it to them. 3 weeks ago, I was training the East African Legislative Assembly. And I told them, this is what I'm going to also be telling Dr. Harun. Dr. Maseno University organized this symposium in collaboration with University of Oslo and others. I have a question. All of you. What is happening? All of you people who have been here eating, are you sure you've not eaten pesticides? I looked at the tomatoes that we ate at lunch, and I'm like, there's this hotel. This is where we are starting from. I went to the East African Legislative Assembly, and I told them, whoever does the procurement here, and you as members, I must live here when I have taken you to your court there for having poisoned yourselves intentionally. Now they told me, what does that mean? I told them, wait a minute, we've been working with you. There is already a resolution by the way, with my organization and other coalition members. We have pushed it in that parliament. They passed a resolution that agroecology is a priority key area. Now they accepted and said, thank you. Now what do we do? I told them, what do you do? Give East Africans a policy and a law. Because he is talking about harmonization. Silos will not take us where we want to be. Because now, after Kenya has banned, these people who only care about profits will use Uganda, will use Tanzania, will continue the games. So we need to make sure that at East African level, at least the bare minimum, we must have a policy and a law. Now they've called me to Uganda. They are coming to Uganda's East African Legislative Assembly. That they did not get enough dose, I must add. I should give them more. So, Dr. Harun, we are going to be doing this. And for me, I think I just wanted to give you a story without going into principles of human rights. In fact, in the story, human rights is there. Participation, take it to them. It is war now. We must understand the art of war, and whether you like it or not, we must fight.
Thank you. You have not heard it all. Those are two brains in the field of law. I won't add more. I won't comment because I don't have the language of law. Let me stop there. Colleagues, let's cross over to Kenya. And we are very much honored to have our colleague, Mercy Chelangat. Mercy Chelangat, known for impactful work and over 5 years of multimedia experience, she's a acclaimed documentary for toxic harvest, how farm chemicals are silently killing our farmers. She exposed, and this expose, which this expose, which revealed critical policy gaps and the silent health crisis caused by farm chemicals, earned her significant praise. A relentless truth seeker dedicated to exposing vital issues in Kenya and the region. Mercy holds a bachelor's in communication journalism, and she's currently pursuing her master's degree. Please welcome Mercy Chelangat. This is the force that was behind that documentary that shook the country. Behind that also was Kelvin and the team. They worked jointly for that documentary. And please, let's clap them as a team. It was immeasurable what they did in this country. They exposed things that will never come out. And they focused on where Nganga is transforming in Laikipia, and where we have got a lot of impact on the HHPs, especially the patients that I saw. It was just traumatizing. They called me the following day after the documentary at NTV, and I didn't want to actually watch that documentary more. I don't know how you guys were able to manage that kind of shock that you get from your clientele. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mercy. We do really appreciate your work. More than what you're doing today, I think that is total sacrifice. Allow me, Mercy, to ask you one question in line with that expose. So your investigation, the poison on your plate, toxic harvest, was a wake-up call to both the public and policymakers. In your view, Mercy, how can investigative journalism go beyond exposing risks to actually influencing long-term shifts in pesticide practices and consumer preferences?
Thank you very much, Harun. I think I'll start with the role of media in general, which is to be a watchdog. And our most powerful tool has always been storytelling. And therefore, when we talk about storytelling, we are talking about informing people, we are talking about educating people, we are talking about giving details, exposing gaps, exposing risks that that our people are facing out there. It means telling the stories of farmers who have been affected, telling the stories of consumers. And I say consumer, it's you and me. It's my baby at home. It's my grandmother. It's everybody else who is going to buy tomatoes from Oloitoktok, or potatoes from Nyandarua that Mari was speaking about. And so I think the most powerful tool has been that storytelling, where we tell the stories, let Kenyans see for themselves that we are at risk, we are all suffering, we are all candidates for Mancozeb and eating of paraquat and cancer and Parkinson's disease and neuropathy and all the other diseases that come with long-term exposure and consumption of pesticides. I remember when we spoke to Sholei, and she mentioned that she is part of our WhatsApp group where MPs are contributing money for their fellow members of parliament because one way or another they are treating cancer. So you're part of 15 groups, for example, and all of you are contributing for somebody who has cancer. And I think that is also a powerful tool so that Kenyans can now see, or our leaders can now see, that they are not safe at all. Nobody is safe. And even when we went to the field and spoke to farmers, the organic farmers said that most of them were saying that the inspiration behind them going fully organic was they encountered other farmers who were just doing conventional farming. And they would have their own parcel over there where they do organic farming, and then the other parcel over there where they use chemicals. And they would say, the produce that is coming from this organic parcel is for my family's consumption. And then that one where I use the Mancozeb and the paraquat goes to the guys in Nairobi. And they forget that their child is in boarding school and their school is going to buy the tomatoes. They forget that their sister is a manager somewhere in Parkland, and she's going to buy the very potatoes that is coming from that farmer, or that is coming from you, conventional farmer. you is okay. They forget that tomorrow you would go to a conference like this, or you would eat that kachumbari that came where you used the chemicals. So I think that has been our power. Expose the stories, expose the risks, and is here. Kefis. I would have loved to talk to Kefis because there is a big problem with their double standards. I think I'm going to look for them. But the whole point of holding power to account is so that we also realize these problems that wananchi are facing and something that you can experience. The cancer will still come to your house regardless. If you go to a golf club, is it the herbicides to control the grass? So you think that just because I did not eat that tomato with what is that chemical? With mancozeb, not safe. So you go to your golf to inhale the herbicides in that field and you're not safe. So I think the powerful tool here has been storytelling. We tell stories, let people get annoyed and angry to actually act. Tell farmers that, okay, we have shown you this is poisonous and it's bad, but now there are alternatives. Show how other farmers are doing their farming. What other strategies are they using? What biopesticides are they manufacturing at home? So that at the end of the day, even though you tell farmers that there is a problem here, you're also offering alternatives on this other side, and you're telling them that these farmers have done this and they have succeeded. They have tried organic farming in a farm that was rocky. They have succeeded. They are feeding their families well. Show them that it is truly possible.
Thanks, Mercy. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we now cross over again to Uganda, where we meet our specialist on public health, nutrition, and food systems, Mr. Bwambale Bernard. He is a seasoned public health, nutrition specialist, also with a bias in food systems, with over 7 years experience in Uganda health and nutrition sector. His work focuses on improving nutrition outcomes through sustainable food systems and integrating public health, agriculture, and environmental perspective. He has been actively involved in national and regional initiatives addressing food safety and pesticide regulations and nutrition sensitive agriculture, contribute to policy dialogues on how to build resilient and healthy food system in East Africa. I don't think you need much or more than that from my colleague Bernard. He gave us a powerful presentation here that speaks about who he is. Bernard, I would like to ask you just one question. And as a public health nutritionist, deeply engaged in Uganda's food system, how do you see the intersection between pesticide use, nutrition security, and public health outcomes? And what practical steps can countries like Uganda take to protect consumers while maintaining agricultural productivity? You get it? Thank you.
So it's an interplay of so many things. And I want to assure all of us that we are here because of nutrition. So nutrition is what is driving us. And that's why many of us go to serve food. Now, when you look at the pesticides versus food security versus nutrition security, and then versus public health, it's quite a complicated phenomenon that we need to deal with. I just want to first give you some bit of dots. Just imagine if a doctor tells you that replace sugar with honey. And then, as we talked in the morning, the bees that actually give us the honey have been poisoned. So we are yet to discover whether the pesticides are actually also present in the honey. So while you are dodging the sugar, replacing it with honey, then the honey is probably contaminated with an HHP. And then at the end of the day, look at this consumer whom the nutritionist is telling that, hey, take a lot of vegetables for you to be more healthy, because the vegetables are full of micronutrients, vitamins, and whatever. And then you're talking about vegetables with fiber. That, when you eat more vegetables, you're going to have, a better digestive system and all those sorts of things. And so you're going to have, a better nutrition, etc. But then this consumer goes back to consume those things, but well endowed with HHPs. So while you want to solve a nutrition challenge, you also end up causing a public health issue. So the person ends up having a cancer, which primarily we have to manage with vegetables and fruits. You get it? So when you find me now this time, I talk to you as in suits, but when you come the other side, you find me in my lab coat, and I have to tell you that, hey, this cancer, now we need to manage it with a vegetable X and a fruit Y. And then these have also been heavily sprayed. So you're managing a cancer case, and then the person is taking in another cancerous compound. So it's like, I don't know what you're doing. You're preventing a nutritional challenge, but with a carcinogen. So it becomes a little bit complex when it comes to that kind of situation. And then we have scenarios of children. You know very well that in Africa, most of our children now are actually stunted. You must have read that. So we have a lot of malnutrition amidst the production of food. So the production is high. FAO reports that we are producing enough food for everybody, but not everybody has access to that food. Even those who have access to the food, the quality of the food has been compromised. So we are dealing with a situation where you have too much food, but of poor quality. So it is not meeting the nutrition needs of the population that we are dealing with. Last evening, I had a conversation with Silky and my colleagues, and we're asking, so are pesticides probably related to the amount of nutrients in food? Maybe we need to do more investigation. If, for instance, we are investigating micronutrients in tomatoes, the tomatoes which are organic and those which are sprayed, could there be a relationship between nutrient losses when it comes to production of vegetables? Some studies have already indicated that macronutrients like proteins, they actually reduce when you spray. So now we are trying now to go into what about the micronutrients? What happens to them? So you will find that while the conversation on, we want food security, we need to think about food security versus the food right to food. These are two different things. So you can have food security, but you're not addressing the right to food. So in the right to food, you're talking about adequacy and quality, but then you're talking about food security, you're basically saying availability of food. The food is available, it is accessible, but what is the quality of the food that you're taking? So there is a whole kind of mess when it comes to nutrition versus food security, but also food security and nutrition versus public health. Now, in countries where we have food security and people remain poor, I've always mentioned this, that most of our farmers are actually poor. And the reasons are very clear, only that we don't dive there. Take an instance, doctor. A farmer has to spend more money to produce food because they have to buy a pesticide, they have to buy fertilizer, they have to buy, even at flowering, they have to put something. Now the cost of production of food goes high, and that translates into the cost of purchase of food. And yet the households do not have sufficient money to actually afford a meal. And so that's why you see that the cost of food is high, and so the insecurity is also very high. People are not having access to food because of the cost. But also, when you look at a farmer who is spending a lot of money in producing food and they end up getting sick. So you've produced tomatoes during the course of the season, spend a lot of money. You go and sell the tomatoes and you get actually a lot of money. But this money, what is it going to actually do? So after producing and you've sold and you've gotten 2 million or whatever, then you get this money and you bring it to us in the hospital because your skin has irritations, because you've inhaled a lot of pesticides, and so your kidneys, your lungs, all your internal organs are already affected. So the 2 million that you earned in the sale of tomatoes, you come and spend the whole of it in the hospital. That is if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, you even sell the land so that you're taken to India or to Europe for treatment. So what you've basically done, I don't know how we can term it. You've not gotten the food. You have all the money, but you've spent it on treatment, which was not the primary role for which you actually cultivated. So these things are interlinked, and I think we need to look at them from that kind of perspective. How it is affecting production, nutrition, food security, food safety, health, and then eventually the poverty comes in. So that's how I can frame this whole thing. Thank you.
So my point is that Bernard has really answered that question very well, giving examples that we can relate with very, very well. Thank you so much, Bernard. Colleagues, we move now back to Tanzania, where we meet Dr. Jones, good friend of mine who has widely published. Thank you very much for being a real rigor scientist. Dr. Jones is Dr. Jones Axon Kapeleka is environmental and food safety scientist at Tanzania Plant Health and Pest Authority in Arusha, Tanzania. I hope, David, you will not take him to court. I think you threatened my colleague from, so please don't. Please. Dr. John's research focuses on pesticide residues, exposure risk, and microbial contamination in fruits and vegetables with smallholder systems. He has extensive experience in toxicology, assessment, and residual monitoring. Dr. Kapeleka has continued to national and regional efforts to strengthen pesticide management, food safety policy, and consumer protection. At least that's comfort. PB in such an environment and discuss in a so I'm extending this kind of discussion of what I think I mentioned to you in Tanzania that I found this so different from what we have here in Kenya, where I can invite the PCPB guys and KFIs and discuss like this from the civil society side. Very common. So thank you and keep up. I think we should follow this, this video, and they should see how we are relating here. So thank you very much. So, Daktari, I have one question for you, please. And based on the fact that your research at is it TIFA? TIP HPA has revealed significant pesticide residues and contamination in fruits and vegetables across Tanzania. Significant contamination of HHPs, the residues, yeah? From your perspective, what are the key gaps preventing this scientific evidence from translating into stronger national and regional pesticide regulation? What is stopping these kind of results that you have to be able to translate into Tanzania stronger regulations and also regulations that are stronger in the region? Please.
Thank you very much for the nice question. It's very nice, really. First of all, I'm very much happy and very much honored to present this and to answer this question before my boss, actually, Dr. Vera. She's my boss and she's my mentor. So, yeah, and that's why you have that component of consumer safety. Yeah, I'm still working and moving with her. So I can answer that question maybe into 2 or 3 main points. The first one is the general public is blinded by the short-term gain in agricultural productivity than long-term health and environmental impact. So most policies, not just in Africa, but if you read literature across the underdeveloped or developing world, you see that most of the policies consider the increase in yield from agricultural productivity or production, other than the increase in health burden imposed by the farmer to the farmer by the use of pesticides. So that's one thing. And the other is there is poor link between policy and action. I can say it is a paradox of which I can say those who develop policies have less knowledge on the burden of pesticides on the farmers. And those who are knowledgeable enough are not even welcomed on the table on making the policies. And sometimes actually they are seen as threats and their inputs are not even recognized. And the other thing is, and those who act to solve the problem, in this case, in our case in Tanzania, maybe because in our administrative setup, we have the agricultural officers in each district and the health officers in each district. But those have no resources to impose the policy. And they are not even supported legally by the policies they are meant to stand on. So that's the gap. And on the other end, the farmers who are the target are ignorant. They are not even aware of the existence of the policies. So you find we are just moving in the vicious circle of, I don't know, it's ignorance of the highest degree or what. Because from the policy making to the implementation, there is no direct line. So there is uncoordinated efforts on addressing pesticide residues and the real effect and the burden of pesticide posed on the population, mostly small scale farmers, as we saw in the presentations, some of the, and it's more or less the same. The pictures we saw on the use of PPEs, we have the same scenario in Tanzania also. And the other thing I can say is most of the policies focus on what we say commercialized crops. Those horticultural crops mainly meant for export, and much less effort is geared towards locally produced and consumed vegetables. For instance, when we were revising or when joining the PHS and TPRI to have the TPHPA, this gap was realized, and the new Plant Health Act recognized, and it has mandated TPHPA to protect the local consumers. It is in the act. But now putting the act into action, that has become another problem. Who does it? Yeah. So, and we have, for instance, we have some, I don't know what they call activists or some national umbrellas for horticulture, and we can find they and now my friend is, you should say, and he said, and in the bios, is mainly working on the registration on those stuff. We have no fast tracking system now in Tanzania through this new act. Fast tracking of pesticide registration. So if you come, how and why do you fast track the registration of pesticide? But we have reasons, and they are justified in the act. But if you look at it, you see it is actually it is a bomb, because every pest has an alternative. Actually, he's working on the alternatives, and he has everything. So, as for me, it is really questionable. How do we allow fast tracking? Does it mean that we don't have any other alternative? We have been talking about agroecology and a lot of different methodologies and approaches to counterattack these pests. So you cannot get the right answer as to why did it came with very much mandatory to have a fast tracking of pesticide registration. And the other thing is I can say this organization on focusing external or export markets. They conform to the external market. For instance, they are very much clear on the use of mancozeb, profaniphos, chlorpyrifos. They do not even give their farmers. So when they produce for the European market, EU market, they make sure farmers never use mancozeb. So they will have to have the alternative to mancozeb for them to fetch market. Now we ask ourselves, why has it not been able, the very same scenario, why has it not been applied to smallholder farmers who produce in uncontrolled environment? So you see, there is a huge gap. And lastly, I can say about my professor in the morning talked about the political interference in science. This is really a problem. We have seen that there is political interference in science. Now, instead of politicians using science to solve problems exposed through research, some scientists have been crucified by revealing the truth from science. So now you can't tell what is the role of science and what is the role of politics in mitigating or addressing exposure issues. It is a challenge. And now you find something which is actually really toxic, so much of health and environmental implication. You report it from the findings. And through the constitution or whatever administrative, there is somebody else in the ministry who is responsible in pronouncing or declaring a certain health or environmental issue. So now what do you do as a scientist? Do you publish? Do you go to tell that somebody in the ministry so everything is complicated. So the policy and the regulatory structure of our East African countries actually on the use of science needs to be relooked at. And last but not least, in connection to that, the lack of political or policy support on science. We did a study between the PHPA and the University of Oslo. I did not have just time to present, but it has some interesting findings. It's where during the colonial era, there was the malaria control program, the Taveta Pare. So they used Diedrin, another DDT. So there was the political regime made where there was strategies to monitor malaria, the dynamics of mosquitoes and all those stuff. But there were no mechanism to monitor the dynamics of DDT and Diedrin in the soil, in the environment. So you see, even if you look for studies in the Pare-Taveta region, you find a lot of studies on the dynamics of the mosquitoes after 60 years. And I don't know now how effective is the DDT, because the current studies in the same Taveta, the Pare, shows the reemergence of mosquitoes. And in the 1967, they declared no mosquitoes, no anopheles and whatever. But now there are mosquitoes. So you find the political regime does not have the good support on the science. So something must be done also on this area. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you. You can hold this. Thank you, my brother. That's a very good wrap up of our dialogue on the politics of pesticides in the region. Is it not? He has really wrapped it very well, linking the policy, science, and politics, and how science does not acknowledge, politics not acknowledge science. So we thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Jones. That's a powerful, and I hope the politicians are not going to take that against you, because I think you are very open. So we declare that this is a scientific forum. It's not a political forum, but politics is part of science. Thank you so much. Now, I know time is not on our side. Thank you so much for being patient with us. Thank you very much for listening to this panel. Your patience, yes, I can see hands up. Your patience is highly, highly acknowledged. Now, I want us to agree how far we will go with the questions so that I can be able to moderate in terms of the questions that we are going to receive. Now it is 5:51, about 9 minutes to 6. And the way I can see, even maybe from the online platform, maybe you have got, do you have a lot of participants online? Okay, let's see how it goes. So maybe we go up 6:30 if you allow, 6:15, depending on how you'll respond to, how we are going to respond to your questions, please. Is that okay? Our farmers? So please, Francis, I can see you nodding. Thank you so much, Mr. Francis Ngiri. Thank you. Before I give floor, mic to the to our listeners, I would like just Bernard to give a quick question to the panel so that it can open maybe more questions that might emerge. Yes, Bernard.
Thank you so much. I was even forced to stand. So there is this issue of the limits, MRL, in vegetables and fruits. And so we put them on the market and then they are rejected. Now, when they are rejected, what happens to them? So, Dr. Kabanda, don't you think that is the point of sowing? Because I mean, if the vegetables have been sent to the market, I mean, it's a contagious issue. Just like they have been stopped from moving out, they have rejected them because they have higher levels of pesticides, and specifically highly hazardous pesticides. So I think also as a fraternity of advocates, we need also to think about why then should something rejected because of the problem be sent back to the local consumers? I think that is problematic enough, that if something is rejected, then it shouldn't come back to the market. But what does the law say? So I think also we need to reflect as we look at areas of intervention. I find that is very critical for us to also discuss during the course of other sessions. Thank you.
Also, we remember the standards. We were told that there are standards for the export market, where there are some AIs, the active ingredients, that should not be used for export, but when it comes to national local production, those ones are allowed. Double standards again. Thank you very much, colleagues. Now, let me stand. I'll start with my sister to ask her questions at a time. You ask a question, please direct to one of panelists, and if it's general, we'll decide who is going to take it.
Thank you very much. My name is Esther Okech, a farmer who works with an organization called Kenya Female Advice Organization. One of the things is that as I'm asking my question is that I'm very keen on knowing about the gender data, because the invisibility of the participation of women in these conversations is very important. And yet unpaid care work, which comes from all the burdens with all those diseases, still falls back on the same women. So it is important for us to also think about that type of data being shared, that Kenya is now costing what unpaid care work is, and how then we can also use this research to ensure that we reinvest that money in the GDP. And then just as a follow-up to that is this one, the fast tracking of for the lawyers, is that we are talking about policies. All these governments of ours ensure they do policies, but they don't do regulations. So it means that regulations, when they're not done, you cannot have budgets on the floor of the house. So part of it is that we really need to track that how many policies do we have with no regulations to enforce the implementation of those policies, so that then we have percentages of the GDP of our countries on the same. If we don't do that, we'll still be talking about no budgets because we do not have regulations on the same. That is for the lawyers. Thank you.
My name is Pramila Mwibanda, working with an organization by the name Kotri. And my question goes to Elizabeth from Greenpeace. Your question, you were able to say that actually the farmers don't actually have a key responsibility or a role. But from some of the remarks which we had from Mercy Chelagat is that some farmers actually are aware and they even plant one plot of land just for them and the other one they sell to the market. So I just want to hear your remarks regarding that, because I think while taking into consideration what is actually happening on the ground, it may influence the approach in some of the advocacy work or awareness creation we're doing. My other question is a general one to all of you. Is this work safe in terms of the advocacy work to basically bring down people's businesses? And why I ask this is because as we go empower people, tell them about the risk associated with this, are they able to also share this information, or they'll have to take a step back because they fear that something may happen? Yeah, thank you.
Mine is a comment on this issue, a judicial dimension. I think we need to focus more now from activism to actionism. We need people now to do what needs to be done. We need to expose what is happening. Because even for these American and European societies, for them to stop and suspend use of these chemicals, there were very much deliberate activities, protests, from stakeholders. Noise. We are not doing it here in Africa. We are not doing it at our capitals. We are not doing it at our parliament. For us to adopt even multi-party, it was action. We will spend all the time in conference halls, seminar and workshops, but when you're not doing actions, and that's why we need to elevate from activism to action. And that is what will bring solutions. Because it's not possible that we are aware and we are seated here conscious that most of these companies poisoning Kenyans are owned by politicians. We must speak it out. These are companies. They are listed in stock exchange. They are making money. Most of subsidiary owners of Monsanto, Bayer, Syngenta, you find politicians there. And these are the same people we are expecting to make solutions for us. It's not possible. It's not possible. Those ingredients that were being removed by Kagwa recently, they said, okay, remove them, but 1 year, whatever you have in stock, you can use it. So literally, Kagwa was telling us, you continue dying for the next 1 year. We never removed everything. They say, because you have something in the stocks, in the warehouses, in godowns, you sell it within 1 year. So what is that? We need to be angry. It's anger that will bring solution. Because no one is safe. We've been told about organic farming, but we have our children in high schools. We have our brothers and sisters who are consuming cereals from the market that is laced with dangerous chemicals. You'll do your best to protect yourself in your house, but you have a kid, a young one, in a boarding school, eating contaminated food. So we need to do what Europeans and Americans did. Action, protest, noise, activation, deliberate activities that will trick the conscience of our leaders to stop this menace. I think that's all I have for now.
Dylan. It's a Belgian NGO, and we've been working a lot on this issue, the EU Parliament, and trying to connect Africa with EU on the same issue. So today I've been very happy since morning, very good discussions, and I was waiting for this moment because at the end of the topic there is about cooperation. So my question also adds up to Mr. Mwangi. What is our action plan from here? Especially because we have the whole of East African delegation a lot of people are doing very good work. What is our next step? Thank you.
Okay, my name is Francis Giri, a farmer from Nakuru, Elementaita. My question goes to Bernard. Bernard talked about something connection between agrochemical companies and pharmaceuticals, whereby agrochemicals sell expensive seeds, then expensive fertilizers and pesticides. And when we eat those pesticides, we become sick. We go to seek medicines from pharmaceutical companies, very expensive medicine, and also high equipment, pharmaceutical equipment like dialysis. So my question is, what can you advise as farmers, or consumers, second consumers, and the third the government?
Yeah, so maybe just I think it was a comment, so I'm going to add a comment on top of your comment. When you talked about the issues of gender when it comes to HHPs, I think we've had different research that have been done looking at impact of HHPs to women, pregnant women, and even to babies. But I think that takes us back to the same conversation of saying, how are we communicating these things? How are we making sure that we are holding people, governments accountable, corporations accountable based on this information? So, and that's why I finished my talk by saying that we are all failing. If we have all this knowledge, I've said that since morning, we've been seeing evidence after evidence after evidence. And if we continue to collect this evidence and don't really translate them to information that can mobilize movements, that can make people say no. I think we were told after the documentary, you see how people were mad and people wanted to act. So how do we make sure that if we have data on this information, we can be able to share? So there's still need for more work, research work to go into that. I agree 100%. But I also feel like there's already some information that are out. What are we doing about that? How are we making sure that we are communicating it in a way that is going to resonate to even our women, so that they can be the ones who are fighting? We know that even small-scale farmers in Africa in general, most of them are women. So how do we make sure that we give this information to them too, so that they can know when you use this pesticide, it can affect your baby when you're pregnant, or it can affect your family like this and that. So I feel like we really need to do a lot when it comes to communicating this. And just to mention about that, we had a Pelham organized a webinar, I think it's 2 weeks ago, if I'm not wrong. And they was talking about, they have this petition, African petition, where they are calling African governments, the AU, the regional bodies to stop the EU from importing those toxic pesticides into our countries. And one of the key things that we were told from the current research, current data of the petition drive is that Africans are not signing it. We are not signing it. Most of those signatures are coming from Europe. So you see, it means that there is a problem somewhere. We have this information. How are we communicating so that we can be able to mobilize power? And then when we talk about a system that is failed, it's not one problem, which is that corporate corporation that is formulating these pesticides and distributing them, or rather just government, or rather just one single problem. When you talk about a system failure, it's very many small problems that end up creating this big mountain that you can't deal with. And that's why I was saying we cannot sit here in this room and blame farmers. When you don't have regulations to say that we are going to monitor how these pesticides are being used, we are going to ban these pesticides, you are already creating a situation where these toxic pesticides are available in the market. And then we have a market system that rewards toxicity. These HHPs are so cheap. Most of them are so cheap. So, and then you find that most farmers, as you heard, most farmers in Africa are the most poorest. And it's really weird, the fact that they are the most poorest, but they are the ones who are feeding us. And even the food that we ate today, I'm so sure, even if it was lunch or breakfast, it came from small-scale farmers around Kisumu. So we have a system, a food system that is flawed. And it allows such things to happen, where we are now seeing farmers are saying, because I have to take kids to school tomorrow and production is expensive, so I'm just going to go through this shortcut so that I can be able to produce and be able to sell that and take my kid to school, or rather sell that and be able to just survive due to livelihood. So that's why when we talk about agroecology, we are talking about a system that is not just looking at production. It's also looking at small-scale farmers' well-being. How is the farmer, their livelihood, their economic situation? So when I say that we cannot blame farmers, I stand by that. When you have a failed system, you already allow all these things to happen down here. So it's like, why can't we fix the system so that we can allow everything to work the way it's supposed to work? Our farmers, most of them are really struggling to produce food, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to just live and provide for their kids. And the system is allowing them to do that. So we have to go and attack the villain, which are our governments. You've had here, they make promises and say that we are going to ban, but they don't do that. We are going to do this, they don't do that. So why can't we be able to attack the villains, who are our governments and also the corporations, and say, no, we don't want to have these pesticides in our countries. Once we don't have them, then I feel like that is already going to close that tap, and we're not going to have any issues with farmers having or being forced to use these pesticides to survive. Thank you.
Lovely. Yes, please.
I can summarize what Madam she said with the 2 sentences. First of all, I would like to highlight the gap that we need joint interventions. The issue of social sciences and pure sciences. The issue of gender and chemical exposure. This is a very virgin area. Not much has been done so far. So I encourage people who are interested to do something on this area. We still have a lot of opportunity. Very little studies have been done on this area. So I would like to invite people who are interested to join efforts on the issue of gender and chemical exposure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I was listening to the contribution concerning gender and pesticides. What I've observed so far is that we are saying women are the most in agriculture. They are the labor force. When they work, some of them, they are not even paid because it is a family farm. But we've been doing research. I've been a researcher for more than 40 years. When we started going out to do research on pesticide exposure and those who are affected, we thought it was men who are mostly affected because they are the ones who are carrying the knapsack and going to spray. So we concentrated on looking at the impact of pesticides on men. But now things are different. And even when we were going out into the farms and asking the women, can we take sample, from you so that we look at the exposure, see how much you have been affected, they will tell you that, no, I don't work with pesticides, so I have no problems. But now we've done a lot of research, especially in Tanzania, to look at the impact of pesticides on women and even their fetal outcome, how the children who are born of women who are exposed to pests. I have two PhD students who are almost completing their study, and one of them has just defended his thesis on carcinogens and cancer in a Tanzanian perspective, and indicated that agriculture has the highest cancer cases in especially head and neck and esophagus. But what I'm seeing, to address the question about women involvement, women are not involved in decision making. When you look at the people who are making decisions on whether to ban pesticides or whether to remove them from the market, it's men who are sitting there and they're saying, no, we are still making money out of these pesticides, so we cannot ban them. But women are affected more than men now. So it's high time we shamed those few women who are in parliament, who are passing laws and regulations and who are not making noise to protect their fellow women. And then we should fight for women to be involved in making decisions on pesticides and health. So this is an area which it has been neglected for many years. Women are not involved in making decisions. Thank you.
Mine is on the action point, and I think if we combine the science, the law, and the advocacy, we do not need to expect solutions from government. If we have cases in the High Court in Kenya, we have cases in the High Court in Uganda, cases in the High Court in Tanzania, for those courts to interpret the legal framework that we already have. because I think there is no absence of laws and measures. Part of the Kenyan Constitution's Article 43, 46 on consumer are similar to Uganda's provisions. Over lunch, we've discussed so much with Council on the same, and even the African Union framework provides for some of these regulations. As far as human rights are concerned, the use of pesticide, actually, in the documentary, he actually called it ecocide, because in a way you really poisoning people through the environment. So it's a different kind of genocide, because when we have people all over East Africa now, we have a combined population of nearly 400 million. So for 400 million people who are highly affected by all these highly hazardous pesticides, something must be done. And to wrap it up, I think in Kenya and Africa and East Africa in particular, we do not have the luxury of a healthcare system that we can rely on curative measures. We can only excel through preventive measures. And this can only happen when we really move to court and ensure these companies do their responsibility as far as extended consumer responsibility is concerned. Thank you, Dr. Arwe.
Just want to add to my sister. She said you are talking about policies and what law is in hierarchy. You can't have regulations without, for example, a parent framework. Now, when it comes to East Africa, they have to us and they are asking, okay, how do we do this? Let us work on a framework, and that's what we need to be pushing. And one of the colleagues was asking whether this work is not dangerous. The answer is yes and no. No, why? Science is for us, isn't it? Whatever we are doing is scientifically proven. And in those countries where these many companies are coming from, people are suing and they are getting hefty damages. So if we also start doing this, and lastly, issue of social justice. Don't expect that what we are doing is conventional law. Law. It is social justice, human rights that we defend, including us, because many of us are chemical illiterate. Call it that.
Okay, thanks. So the gentleman there asked me, what do we do at the different levels? I think beginning with government, my call is always very clear. If something is highly hazardous, then it must be banned. Something is highly hazardous, just like the word mentions, highly hazardous. In case it is hazardous, it should actually not even come closer. It is already hazardous, but this is highly, so it should be banned. That is one of the calls that I could make to government. You mentioned the consumers. One of the quick steps that we can do as part of the action from Beatrice's question, how do we have kind of a regional campaign? I call it regional campaign. Not this small campaign in Kenya and then they succeed, and for us in Uganda we are nashing, and then the other team in Tanzania. These things you've banned, they will come to Uganda and then we sneak them again through the porous border. So you will not have done it. So I think that we can have regional, deliberate regional campaigns. Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and other countries, we have our framework as civil society, as media, and we have one campaign running across on maybe consumer awareness or capacity building or making all these sorts of advocacy noise that we talk about. It would create regional pressure, and then I think that can protect our consumers, but also the farmers. On the side of the farmers, there are other options other than the highly hazardous molecules. We can opt for organic farming, or maybe agroecology. All those are options that we have. The only thing is civil society entities, we need now to scale up agroecology and organic farming or whatever, safer options for the farmers, because they're going to ask us, okay, now I'm taking away carbendazim from my process. So what is the alternative? So I think that the civil society, together with the academia, we need to have these alternatives accessible to the farmers. Let's have them accessible to them so that they are able to access these alternatives and be able to use them. To the consumers, I think our role is very clear. If I go to the market, for instance, I've always told Dr. Kaban, if I go to the market and I found tomatoes which are supposed to be red and they are now white, I mean, is it all about eating the tomato? Can't I leave it? Can't I do without it? So I keep telling consumers that we need to be protected, but also we need to protect ourselves. In a situation where you see that you can even visibly see the chemical, of course there are incidences where you cannot see. But in a situation where you can be able to observe, run away and save a life. So I think that we can do this at different levels. The media help us to, create this awareness, send it out there. Let us repackage this data, make it a little bit palatable for the communities. And all of us, we need to make sure that we are responsible for each other. Create awareness, build the capacity, and we must, all of us, join the advocacy campaign against the highly hazardous molecules. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
One addition on whether to blame somebody commented on whether to blame farmers on this problem we are having. Actually, it's not a matter of blaming farmers, but farmers have a role to play. Why am I saying so? Because it is clear when we go to the field, we find almost all farmers have a backyard garden where they plant for their families. So they are knowledgeable of the health impacts of pesticides. Now maybe the anthropologists and maybe sociologists and whoever should try to tell us why are these people not replicating what they do to themselves, to the other people. Yeah, maybe, Professor, you have to tell us. Because if they know that I should not feed my family with this, then why does he or she agree to sell it to the market? Where actually we know with the ants, the whoever is there. So I think you guys have to tell us. We don't know, but something must be done and you tell us why is it so. And on top of that, there's just one study we completed with the World Veg in Arusha, where we are doing a comparative assessment of pesticide residues in vegetables which are grown under the herbs, their project, and those in open environment. And we had a significant decrease in the number of pesticide residues at the cocktail and also the levels. So if that could be, so farmers who are under World Veg are producing vegetables with less pesticide. But the message is no matter how safe you use the pesticide, there will always be residues. But if this could be, if this is the first, it's like the first step toward addressing the issue. Why can't it be applied by farmers everywhere? Is it what the World Veg is doing is they're just monitoring the use. They provide pesticide from reliable source because they come and ask who are the reliable suppliers of pesticide. We tell them. So they supply pesticide from, they get pesticide from reliable source and they give it to the farmers. They train them how to use. They observe pre-harvest, re-entry intervals, and that gave a significant decrease in the numbers and levels. So farmers have their role to play, but what is it that is motivating them to do so? But they have to be motivated to do so. If we don't get that motivation aspect, then we won't reach the goal. So I think we have to get the motivation. What I think, is it anthropologists also to tell us this, or sociologists? You tell us, what is it that motivates these people to do what they're doing? So they can help us resolve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Thank you so much. Two issues about regulations so that we can have budget allocation. Actually, it's not necessary regulations that translate to budgeting processing, especially if you look at our counties, if the structure of the Kenya government. But there are some processes that we can use, especially in the public participation, where we can include agroecology aspects. We are doing that through a program we call Learning Pots. And we are requesting you join the Route to Food Initiative Alliance. As an Alliance member, you can learn about it because we'll be exchanging information, whereby community members work through their wards to influence the budgeting of agroecological related practices in the budget for the county. But yes, regulations can do. And also the policies that are developed, we need to develop implementation and monitoring framework, against which different institutions can plug in to commit funding, including what government will commit itself. So through CASCOM, the county government can be able to allocate budget for specific agroecological practices, and also other partners pledge to align their budget to what CASCOM is going to agree in line of agroecology. We want to start testing this whether it can work in line of agroecology, like in Nakuru, where we want to do this, and we'll be talking to our partners from tomorrow to see how we can be able to work in other countries. Does that help?